Another concern that I have is that I've heard your teams have been holding regular meetings where listings plus sellers and buyers' needs are discussed. Now, the danger here is that team members may learn confidential information about in-house listings or buyers' resources. Because these are conversations about our clients of the brokerage, the information being shared needs to stay confidential. Although I know no one would ever divulge anything intentionally, if it does happen, it becomes an issue that must be reported to the client. It creates a liability not only for me, but for the brokerage.
But my team really loves those meetings. It helps everyone get pumped up and helps us identify properties that we can bring buyers to. We rely on each other's help to get our clients the best deal we can.
Well, of course you can still work together and hold regular meetings, but it is important that discussions stick to the facts about the property and information that isn't confidential. The buyer or seller motivation, willingness to consider offers or other terms and conditions, and the price either side is willing to accept needs to be left out of the discussion. In fact, any discussion regarding price adjustments are just better left out altogether.
We can do that. Thanks for the advice. Are there other things we should be doing differently?
Well, another thing agents sometimes struggle with is when they work with a buyer who has previously been represented by the brokerage as a seller client. It's natural they'd expect the same level of service and information as before. However, if they become interested in a listing of ours, we get into a limited dual agency situation. And as such, you won't be able to provide them with the same level of guidance as when they were the only client of the brokerage in a transaction. It's really important that we don't overpromise on our services in a way that could compromise our service during a transaction with limited dual agency. We're also required to keep information learned previously about a client confidential, even if they come to us as a customer later on.
So we aren't helping our clients the way we should be then? We promise them they can expect the highest level of service when working with our team.
No, we're just helping them in a different way. This will take some practice, but the key is to always keep your client duties in mind. Now, I know we don't usually memorize these things, but I've taken the time to mark that section there in our law book. So whenever you get a chance, please, familiarize yourselves with it a little bit better. You're still required to perform the terms of your written agreement with your client, to exercise reasonable skill and care, to be honest, to receive and present all written offers and counteroffers, to account for any property and money received, and to assist them in locating a suitable property.
How do we even be able to negotiate in that situation?
Well, that's one of the ways your assistance to them is limited. When limited dual agency without assigned agents is in play, you can no longer advocate for one client over another. You must act in a way that doesn't create any conflict of interest for the brokerage.
We often have first-time home buyers, most of whom don't know anything about the market, and they're depending on us to really lead them through the transaction as their agent. They think my job as their agent is to get them the best deal.
Yeah, well, we need to remind them of our duties as a dual agent, focusing on what we can do for them, and as appropriate, reminding them we can't share information that may be detrimental to the other party. Now, in any transaction, we should be careful preparing and providing the information to ensure we're allowing the client to make an informed decision.
All right, what about using assigned agents? Doesn't that allow us to advocate for the client as if they were our only client in the transaction?
Well, assigned agency does allow you to represent the client more fully. Now, in this situation, you'd be able to advocate for the client, but there are still some limits on the information you can provide. Sometimes agents mistakenly believe that if they're representing a buyer in a transaction, they're obligated to disclose any information they learn about the seller that'll help the buyer. That's one reason why those team or office meetings should focus on the details of the property and shouldn't include any discussions of client motivation.
Since our team only represents buyers, I never realized if my team represents the buyer and another team in the office represents the seller, we're still assigned agents?
Yes. And it does require the assigned agents set up safeguards to ensure the confidentiality of client information. But it isn't substantially more than the safeguards that should be in place for every client.
While I was having dinner last week, I overheard a couple of real estate agents talking about their clients at another table, and it made me so uncomfortable to know they didn't realize I could hear them and what they were saying. Confidentiality is something we always have to keep in mind because we never know who might be listening.
I agree. Things like keeping client folders locked up instead of strewn out on a desk, or picking documents off the printer promptly.
Avoiding shared email addresses and only discussing confidential information in a secure environment.
Very important.
Really important.
Confidentiality and managing client expectations are the most important aspects of agency in any transaction, but especially when limited dual agency is involved. As your broker, I'm the number one source of guidance in this topic. Even though each of you has established a team, I'm still responsible for supervising all licensed and unlicensed staff associated with my brokerage. That means I can be held accountable for actions of your team members. Liability is a broker's kryptonite. As members of the brokerage, we all have a responsibility to put safeguards in place to reduce our liability.
Even though the buyer or seller may not be represented by your team, they may still be represented by another agent within the brokerage. The agency relationship is between the client and the broker, not the agent and the client. If the agency relationship is limited dual agency without assigned agents, all associates of the firm must refrain from advocating on behalf of one client over another. They must also refrain from disclosing information they obtained from any other client with whom the brokerage has or had an agency relationship. Confidential information must be carefully safeguarded. Limited dual agency representation can require more care and thought, but it doesn't have to be difficult. Take the time now to have a discussion with your broker about how to handle certain situations when they occur.